Good morning. You're on Sunrise Santa Rosa.
Good morning. This is Doug Underhill calling in. How are you?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Living the dream every day.
Good to have you with us today. Now, we've been talking about the coronavirus. Of course, that's what everybody's talking about. The president and Dr. Fauci said, we got a very painful 2 weeks coming. We've got lots of folks that are going to die from this thing. We've got the number of cases going up in Escambia and in Santa Rosa. And you have come up with a thought. You sent out an email. Was that yesterday or the day before?
I believe it was the day before.
Day before, on Monday. So you sent out an email, and the email said what, sir?
The email said that, basically the government is right in reminding you that you really need to wash your hands, that personal hygiene is extremely important, that the social distancing is important. But it's possible to have this conversation without being afraid, without having, being driven by fear and anger. And really, there's a lot of anger involved in the conversation right now that we have to extract that, because we have to stay focused on, on really looking at the facts for what they are and not using the data to instill fear. And unfortunately, really, that's most of what the press has been doing since this started.
Okay, and I said from the beginning, and I'm kind of changed my mind on this, was that a lot of the response was not a response to the virus, but a response to the response. It seemed really over the top at first. Does that make sense? Everybody was kind of...
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. It's the response to the response. It's the concept called the sum of all fears. When you put people together in a group and they're supposed to make decisions, but there's not enough fact, then what they'll do is say, well, I don't know what to do, but, Bob did A, and so I'm going to do what Bob did, but I'm also going to add something to it,
right,
so I don't look like I'm just following Bob, because I'm supposed to be a leader. It's the sum of all fears concept. They teach this aggressively to military officers to make sure that you're acting based on the data that you have. Now, like you just said earlier, you said that the number of positives in Escambia has increased. Well, absolutely. It's going to increase when you increase your testing
exactly.
fourfold.
Exactly.
So if you increase your testing fourfold, but your positives only go up twofold, then that's a reason to rejoice. That is not a reason to fear. Because what it tells you is your percentages, your likelihood, which really, this is what every citizen really cares about. What's my likelihood of getting this disease? What's my likelihood of being hospitalized if I get this disease? And what's my possibility of dying if I get this disease? And those numbers, those likelihoods, those are percentages. Those are going down every single time we get a new batch of testing in.
Okay, we're talking to Doug Underhill, County Commissioner for Escambia County, and so you had a pretty radical thought by most standards about the beaches and the restaurants. Explain that.
Well, it should not be a radical thought in a free republic for the government not to take things away from people. Okay. In the Second Amendment discussion, we do not take away guns from everybody because a couple of jackwagons don't use their guns properly.
And you used my favorite word.
That is exactly the same theory that went into closing the beaches. If you remember, CNN used the video of one drunken jackwagon down in South Florida as an example of why the citizens can't use the beach. And that's, that's just not an acceptable form of governance to me. The same thing happened with boating. Boats have to be 50 feet apart now because some people did a raft up. Well, there's not a bit of evidence that says that doing a raft up is passing this disease to anybody. There's no evidence that says making us have our boats 50 feet apart is making the disease less transmittable. And that's what we have to do. We have to back off of those ideas. And I'll tell you what's going on there is some people see other people having fun, and it makes them angry.
Yeah.
And again, if there's anger in your heart, if there's hatred toward others in your heart, then you are not fit to lead or to help leaders make decisions in a free society. Those two things, so we can open the beach and properly police them, just like we We can have an armed society and properly police it. We can. The regulations and limitations on voting are just about the silliest thing.
Yeah,
that's clearly government just reacting because somebody, because a video went viral or whatever. Government has to stop doing that. Government leaders have to make decisions based on the numbers, and what we know about the numbers is we can start opening up our economy again. We can start putting people back to work so they can feed their families again. We don't have to live in fear. We can live intelligently. We can make sure that we wash our hands, and for God's sake, don't touch your face. They taught us that in boot camp. Can't remember how many push-ups I had to do in boot camp for every time I put my hand near my face. And the reason for that is that the Navy is extremely serious about infection control because you've got a whole bunch of people living in very close quarters out at sea. And so that's really the whole point behind the letter. If you actually look at the letter, there's nothing particularly radical about it. The only thing radical about it is that it's not following the same herd mentality that's being forced down our throats right now.
Now, you talked about the restaurants, if I'm not mistaken, about opening those back up for limited seating, right? Was that? Do I understand that correctly?
Absolutely.
Back to about 50% kind of a kind of projection for seating.
Yeah, you have to understand that the average commercial kitchen is much cleaner than your kitchen at home.
Right.
In the commercial, in the restaurant world, they say if you've got time enough to about their employees, if you've got time enough to lean, you've got time enough to clean. Which means there are people who are constantly cleaning the environment that you're eating in, and the food prep is being done in. That's not happening at your home. I can just about guarantee it.
Right. So, what do you see as problems with this? What do you see as the positives in this?
Well, the first thing is that we have taken modeling and simulation and turned it from a tool that we use to exercise people's ability to make decisions when in difficult situations. And modeling and simulation, particularly through the climate change argument, became almost this Bible. And you've got leaders that use modeling and simulation to say, well, according to the models, we're all going to be underwater in 20 years, or it's going to be an ice age in 15 years, or whatever. And we've watched this really over the last 30 or 40 years, we've watched this concept that according to the models, such and such. But nobody ever asks, okay, well, show me the model. Show me the assumptions that went into the model. Show me the adjustments that were made. And I can say with absolute certainty, if anybody's looking at the Imperial College of London model, that's the one that said 2.2 million dead if we don't do anything, 1.1 million dead if we do the social distancing, and 100 to 200,000 dead if we basically go on quarantine lockdown for 18 months. Well, that Imperial College model is complete garbage. It made some of the most egregious violations of the modeling profession, because it didn't really take into consideration most of the variables that are significantly different between us and China and Italy. It's just garbage. It's garbage science. It's junk science in the same way that Al Gore's things that said that we were all going to be underwater by now. 20 years ago were. And it's truly unfortunate, because what's happened as a society is if you see something and the data says something that you want to believe, then you believe it as if Christ said it himself. But if you see some information that is opposing what you want, then the response to that is, oh, you're an idiot. Right. So
that's why Facebook lives.
And we have to stop focusing on these models, and we have to really start focusing on the actual data that we have. And I'll give you the best example. All of us here on the hurricane coast, we know that as soon as there's a hurricane in the Gulf, we see the spaghetti models, right? And the spaghetti models, all of those are following good modeling and simulation protocols, and you get 15 different ideas about where that storm is going to go.
Right.
And none of them turn out to be exactly correct.
Exactly.
So if we know that about hurricanes, then why in the world are we destroying our economy and making all of our decisions based on a limited number of models that we're not even asking the hard questions about?
That's exactly right. Now we've got restaurants that are this is very damaging to our restaurant business. They are being decimated by this thing, and if this plays out, we will lose probably maybe a third of them. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, certainly possible, but I will tell you that it's not an if-then. It's not if this thing plays out. You have to understand that people that work in the restaurant industry and the hotel industry, these folks are income vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And the way many of them live their lives is that their paycheck pays their bills and their tips every day pay for their food and necessaries. Well, right. Their tips ran out a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Okay, so this isn't a problem that's going to affect them 4 weeks from now when the government finally gets around maybe to sending them some paltry check. These people, they lost their ability to feed their families based on their own hard labor 2 weeks ago.
Right.
They are suffering today. And they are suffering today for no particular, really not based on intellectual thought, but based on the fear. And it was fear-mongering that was done by people who are not income vulnerable. Okay, the people who made those decisions, me and my four peers, we still have our paychecks.
Right.
That's a problem. Okay. All of the very highly paid CEOs of our hospitals and everybody else who's not everybody, the elderly or anybody else who's got fixed paychecks, they are not suffering the consequences of the bad governance that we did 2 weeks ago, closing down all of our restaurants and hotels. Now, if you open up the restaurants at 50%. Not everybody's going to be able to go back to work.
Right.
It's not going to solve everything. I'm not saying that it will. And I can assure you that if the hotels are running at 50% occupancy, the rich and hated owners of the hotels, they're not making any money. They're breaking even at best. But the people go back to work, and that is the thing that matters the most. The working class, that's the backbone of our economy. Those are the people that if we don't put them back to work, then they go from being independent to government dependent. Now, who thinks it's a good idea for 30% of our population to become government dependent overnight because the government overreacted with fear?
Right. There's one party that does that. All right. Commissioner Doug Underhill, we appreciate your thought and your input this morning. And hang in there, man.
Hey, it's been my pleasure, and I tell you, the response back that I've gotten from all over Florida has been very positive. Obviously, there's going to be an occasional person that sends something saying, cussing me out and calling me, Trump's little baby or whatever. But if people speak like that, I don't really think too much of their opinion anyway. My intent was to change the dialogue back to rational thought, and the email has definitely had that effect.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. You call back anytime.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Commissioner Doug Underhill. Hey, listen. But that is an interesting thought.